Right, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is basically a video today about improving again the quality of my videos that I put up on YouTube, and I'm actually filming this today with a different camera. So since starting this channel a couple of years ago, I've kind of migrated from using my old Olympus E-M5 film camera up to the Osmo Pocket, and now I've kind of bought another camera to try and basically reduce the amount of equipment that I carry with me when I'm out doing photography and videos. So I've actually bought an Olympus E-M5 Mark III, and I was very reluctant in buying this camera, and I kind of always wanted as well to buy a Fuji X-H1, because with my experiences with Fuji, with the XE1 and then the X Pro one, I've kind of really liked the colours and the physical controls and some of the settings which Olympus struggles with. The Fuji cameras seem to do better, and I'll explain about that in a little while. But ultimately, the reason why I didn't get the Fuji in the end was mainly price. It's still quite expensive considering it's quite an old camera now, whereas I managed to get a really good deal on the Olympus. And I generally have enjoyed using Olympus cameras, and I've only literally been using this camera for a week now, and I've been very impressed with its capabilities. And at the moment I haven't got a proper kind of vlogging lens on this camera. It's only my 12-40, which adds a considerable amount of weight to the setup. So if I like this camera for my vlogging duties as well over my Osmo Pocket, then I'll look to sell the Osmo and get a more dedicated, compact and lighter vlogging lens, because that was one of the things that appealed to me in getting this Olympus camera, in that it only really weighs 414 grams, which isn't really a great deal these days, and it has an articulating screen, so I can actually see myself videoing, and I can be confident, or more confident, that I'm in focus, because that's something with the Osmo Pocket I really struggled with. Yes, you can attach a phone and you can do all sorts with it to provide a better experience, but I almost wanted to simplify my videos, and with the Olympus, with a flick of the switch, I can switch between photography and video modes very easily and quickly. And yeah, so I'm hoping it's going to simplify my photography and my video making abilities. Another thing with the Osmo as well that I was kind of getting increasingly frustrated about was that the performance in low light was extremely disappointing. Yes, this is still only a micro four thirds sensor, but it's a hell of a lot bigger than the sensor in the Osmo Pocket. And from my tests off camera at home, I've been very impressed with its ability in terms of video. A couple downsides potentially with the Olympus is that it doesn't do what's called auto ISO in video manual mode. So you can set it, ideally you should be at a wide aperture to basically blur the background away, and then also the shutter speed should be double what your frame rate that you're shooting the video at. So if you're shooting it 30 frames per second, which I am today, your shutter speed should be 1/60th of a second for that almost cinematic look to your videos. You can go into manual mode obviously with the Olympus in video, but then you haven't got the option to set the ISO to auto, so you would have to kind of change the exposure as you're seeing it manually to match the changing light conditions. And anyway, beside that as well, you can shoot auto ISO in other video modes such as aperture priority, and that's actually what I'm shooting at now. And yes, you can actually do that on the Osmo, in that it has a good manual mode where you can automatically select the shutter speed, the aperture and auto ISO. But in truth, I only really ever shot with the Osmo in its auto mode. So I thought I'd give the Olympus a go first off in aperture priority. So it's at f2.8 with auto ISO, but I've got no idea really what the shutter speed is doing in this particular mode. From my limited testing at home, it does seem to do a pretty good job in this mode, so I'll probably keep at it for the time being. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I was keen on getting a Fuji X-H1 or a Fuji X-T2, but mainly probably the Fuji X-H1 because it's got IBIS, and that's another reason why I went for the Olympus in the end, because its in-body image stabilisation system is probably one of the best in the world. And even though I don't do a great deal of holding the camera and walking, it's probably going to be better than having a camera that hasn't got that system. And I know the X-H1 has got an IBIS system, but the size of the camera was kind of, for me, approaching to a little bit DSLR-like, and I think it was about 673 grams just for the body alone before you even added a lens, whereas the Olympus, obviously, it's 414 grams, and I'm looking at getting a Panasonic 14mm f2.5 to be my main vlogging lens, and that only weighs 50 grams. So all in all, my vlogging kind of setup will be under 500 grams. And these Rode Wireless Go microphones, the receiver on the camera weighs next to nothing. So all in all, it's a very light system. And I just love the idea that I could use one camera potentially to do my photography and my video. So I probably will still look to get a Fuji X-T20 maybe in the future, because I am still interested in trying out the Fuji for its newer film simulation profiles, certainly for classic chrome and its black and white Acros simulations. And I think the video as well on the X-T20, even though not as good as the X-H1 and the X-T2, will still give me an idea and a point of comparison with what Olympus can provide. So how's this looking now? I'll move in, see how you think it's doing. So it is supposed to be, so it is in continual autofocus mode, this camera. So if I move around the scene, hopefully I will stay in focus, because that again is another issue I had with the Osmo. I didn't really find it to be that reliable at keeping me in focus, especially when I was moving around in potentially a scene like this where I'm under some trees and the light is not as good as it is out in the open. So yeah, so in summary, over the Osmo, I can see myself a lot clearer in terms of framing of this video, as well as actually seeing whether I'm in focus or not. And secondly, hopefully the noise performance when I'm filming in lower light will be a lot better on the Olympus than it is on the Osmo. Hopefully as well the audio is sounding very clear. I did a lot of testing yesterday on different settings on this camera, and I ended up settling on a particular set of settings, as well as setting the Rode Wireless Go itself to its max kind of boost level as well, to see how well that performs. So obviously as time goes on, I might tweak that slightly to give myself less to do in post. So what I'll probably just do now is I'll just switch to the Osmo Pocket in this same position just to see how it performs, and then I'll do something a bit Kasey-like, where I'll try and hold both cameras side by side and just walk around this particular area and see how well they both do, because I still need kind of convincing whether the Olympus is going to be the single camera that can do it all, or whether there's still value in keeping the Osmo Pocket for some video vlogging duties. Although, like I said earlier, I still want to try other cameras, because I'm still not giving up on Fuji. Although my other concern as well was that because I've got the XC1, which has got the original X-Trans sensor, whether I'm going to be disappointed in trying the later Fuji cameras with more modern digital looking sensors So yeah, that's going to be really interesting in the coming months when my funds recover a little bit from this particular purchase. Another thing with the Olympus as well is I was really worried about its battery life. It's a lot smaller battery than its EM1 series siblings, but so far I'm quite impressed with how much footage I can film, and also as well messing around with the settings and taking pictures. It did last a lot longer than I was expecting, but obviously if I decide to ditch this, then I probably will look to buy another battery for this camera. So let's switch to the Osmo now and see what the differences are. Right, so I'm now filming on the Osmo, and if I squint I can see that I am in the frame, so hopefully it's coming across okay. And one thing I forgot to mention as well is the Olympus has only got basically 1080 or 4K video modes, whereas obviously the Osmo has got a lot more modes than that. Like for instance, I'm shooting this actually in 2.7K 30 frames per second, because when I've done some testing with the Osmo before, that seems to be the sweet spot for me in terms of video quality. So it'd be interesting to compare the two modes, and maybe I should just drop it down to 1080 now just to make it a bit fairer with the Olympus comparison. So I'll just stop the video and I'll just switch it to 1080. There we go. So I've just dropped the Osmo Pocket to 1080 30 frames per second. So if I put up some footage from earlier with the Olympus alongside, hopefully you can compare and see what looks better. Obviously the Olympus cost me a lot more. Like I think I bought this several years ago now for 150 quid. And yes, the accessories that I've had to buy have made the setup a lot more, or a little bit more expensive, but the Olympus still cost me £630 this week for new, which was an extraordinarily good deal, because obviously if you're used to my channel, I don't mind buying used gear, but this time there wasn't any cheaper copies out there of the Olympus E-M5 Mark III. It was actually cheaper this time around to buy new, because I think I just timed it right with an eBay shop where eBay had a 10% coupon doing the rounds. So that kind of really brought down the price for me. So I'll try and set up a Kasey-like comparison where I hold both of the cameras out on my arms and see how we get on with the footage. But I think even if the footage from the Osmo is still good, it would have to really blow me away for me to want to keep the Osmo, because I'm all about just trying to carry the littlest amount of equipment when I'm out doing my photo walks and my adventures that I've been on my channel so far. Right, so here we go. This is now got both cameras hooked up, and I'm walking along this extremely overgrown path down here at the mill today. If you followed me on my previous videos when I've been down here, the growth over the last few months is staggering in the kind of the floor aspect of this mill. So I think definitely when I'm walking along, and again I'm still testing this out, but basically obviously you'll be interested to see how well the stabilisation works between the Osmo and the Olympus. But basically I feel that I can see more of my surroundings with the Osmo, because I guess technically I'm with a smaller lens, I'm holding it further away from myself, whereas obviously with the Olympus I've got the 12 to 40mm quite heavy lens. It's about 385 grams, which is obviously a lot more than the actual 55 grams of the Panasonic 14mm that I'm kind of contemplating for my vlogging lens. Although this is probably as far away as I'd like to hold it. And let me just check. The camera is at 14mm now, so I'm kind of wondering whether I need to go a little bit wider, because obviously you're probably not seeing much more of the surrounding compared to what you're seeing on the Osmo Pocket, which also coincidentally is a lot lighter. That's definitely one thing going for the Osmo over here. You're definitely a lot lighter at the moment, but like I said, I'm going to try and get a lighter lens. So yeah, so I'll be interested to see how well the video looks. They're both the same now, 1080p, 30 frames per second on the Osmo as well as the Olympus. And yeah, I'm quite surprised. I'll have to put out my arm a little bit more to get more of my surroundings in the frame. But what I might just do now actually is I'll just switch to 12mm on this lens. So that's 12mm now, and I can actually see a lot more, probably similar to what I can see in the Osmo Pocket. So how well is both of these cameras doing? I don't know how Kasey does it. It's very hard to kind of keep track of which camera you're speaking to and what actually you are speaking about. But hopefully this is giving a good test between both of these cameras. And I'm now moving out into a bit better light, so perhaps it will be another good kind of test. But yeah, I can definitely see more in the Osmo because it's a lot easier. I'll tell you what, my arm as well is getting seriously tight because I haven't really done much vlogging like this recently. I'm looking at the image on the Olympus screen and it does look a lot better. Like, I think it's going to look a lot more cinematic than the Osmo Pocket. It's just a case of maybe looking at a different focal length like that. This is at 12mm still, to get more of my surroundings in the actual shot. Whereas the Osmo doesn't really need to. With the Osmo, I get quite a lot in the frame itself. So yeah, I'll just quickly walk back down to my starting position and we'll see how well these two cameras cope underneath the canopy here. I turned the face tracking off on the Osmo, so it's tracking me, but it's not kind of moving the gimbal to track me. It's kind of keeping me in the frame without moving. Or I'm trying to keep myself in the frame while I'm moving around as well. It'll be interesting as well to see how well this copes with my glasses. I might just take my glasses off now and see whether it does a better job. So how is that looking? But no, this is definitely on the Olympus here. It's definitely too heavy a setup as it stands. So I'm really glad that I didn't go for the Fuji X-H1 or the Fuji X-T2, which don't have an articulated screen anyway. And then the X-T4 is obviously the obvious choice for a hybrid camera these days. But again, the Fuji X-T4 itself is pretty heavy. So I think, yeah, definitely a lighter lens with the Olympus E-M5 Mark III is definitely going to be the way forward, because it hardly feels like I'm holding anything with the Osmo in my right hand compared to the Olympus here in my left hand. Right, so I'll just give my left hand a bit of a rest and hold the Olympus with my right hand, and I'll just do a bit more walking around and so you can see for yourself how well the stabilisation is doing. I guess one thing I've turned on as well, which might be having an impact on the frame, is that I've got obviously the in-body stabilisation turned on, but then also Olympus's digital stabilisation, and I do know that does apply a crop to the image. So what I might just do now while I think about it is just turn that off and see whether that has much of an impact on the image, because if it still looks just as good when I'm walking around with only the in-body stabilisation and I can see more of the surroundings for vlogging, then I think I might leave it off and try and still go for the 14mm Panasonic f2.5 because it's a lot cheaper than the Olympus 12mm f2. Right, so let's switch to just in-body stabilisation only. So this is just the in-body stabilisation now. I've turned off the digital stabilisation and I can already tell that I am seeing more of the surroundings at 12mm. I'll just switch it to 14mm and see if I can still get away with it. So that's it at 14mm. I think, yeah, I'll put up some footage alongside when I did it with both sets of stabilisations, so in-body and so sensor and digital stabilisation, and we can see whether there's much difference. And I've got my arm fully stretched out now, so it couldn't go much wider than this at 14mm, but whether this is good enough, I think looking at the screen it is, as long as it stabilisation wise it's okay without the digital stabilisation turned on. So this is 14mm again. I guess the only thing I haven't done, and I might do that as well now, is do a kind of a focus test with the camera of me kind of going out of the frame, coming back in and seeing how quickly the camera picks me up, because I know I had, like I said earlier, I had issues with the Osmo Pocket tracking me, and if it did try to track me and then lost me, it wouldn't then regain my kind of tracking when I came back into the frame or the position that I wanted to be in. So yes, while I'll lose with the Olympus its ability to kind of follow me in a scene, hopefully the fact that I can see myself in its screen a lot clearly, and if it stays in the same position, it will pick me up a lot better. So let's just try that out now, and I think that should be it, I think, for this video. Let's get going with the Kasey camera conspiracy montage. I'm not sure whether you could actually get a box around your face all the time, because it did, before you press the shutter button, you can actually see quite clearly a white box around your face and it's tracking you. But as soon as you kind of launch into record mode, that box disappears. So I wonder whether you can actually get that to stay on, so you can have more confidence that it is tracking, continually tracking your face whilst videoing. But I guess when I get the footage at home and check that out for myself, then hopefully that will give me the confidence that it's doing its thing. So there we go. I wonder how the camera performed, but it is nice to be actually, even from back here, have a good sense that like there I was blocking the wheel, whereas if I just move over a little bit now, I'm not blocking the wheel. And I guess it's just getting used to that sensor and this kind of framing over my Osmo Pocket, which is a little bit harder to see because of its size. So yes, I think that wraps that up for this video. And just for information, I've managed to film the entire video on this on single battery, and it's still showing 2 out of 3 bars left. So battery life isn't that bad Another camera obviously which is similar to this is the E-M1 Mark II, which people say that the E-M5 Mark III is basically a baby E-M1 Mark II. But the reason again I went for the E-M5 version is because basically it weighs a lot less, it's a lot more compact, and it was going to be heavier and bigger than my E-M1, which is probably the limit of what I'm kind of comfortable with anyway. So this camera definitely ticks a lot more boxes for me, and hopefully the video, if it looks as good as it does on the screen, on the actual screen when I get it home, then I think I'm going to be more than happy with this camera. So yeah, I think that wraps up this one. Like I said, I've only really been using this for less than a week now, so if there's anything else you want me to test, because when I was looking around, not many people seem to use this camera for their vlogging, and I know Kasey from Conspiracies did try it out, but the results looked awful compared to his Panasonic G8 V, and to be honest, that camera, I did take a serious look at that camera to see whether it would suit my needs, but the thing that swung it for me with the Olympus was because I still use some 4/3 lenses from Olympus's previous system, and they absolutely work like a dream on this camera, much better again compared to my old Olympus E-M1 camera. So anyway, thanks for watching, hopefully I'm in focus, and I'll see you next time.